Hi there, I'm Brooklyn, and I'm 29 years old. The most significant lesson I've ever learned is this one. Not all bruises are visible. Silence and neglect can result in some of the most serious harm. By growing up in a household where people watch you but never actually listen. My world was like that. I am the second child of Oscar and Sandra. Despite being blood related, my parents are not very affectionate. My older brother Martin was the son. They all went around in circles. He didn't have to work for it. He had nothing to demonstrate. As soon as he opened his eyes in this world, they handed them to him. When I was growing up, Martin got cake for a B grade and praise at every parent-teacher conference, but I got scolding for everything that wasn't perfect. If I brought a school certificate home, they would pretend to smile. Every time Martin scored a goal in soccer, Dad practically celebrated. After a time, I stopped bringing them. I have some fantastic news. I gave up attempting to win their favor after realizing too early. They had no desire to boast about me as a child. The holidays were the most difficult. Martin was given the newest gadgets, new shoes, and gym memberships. I got journals, cheap sweaters, and the same line every year. Your affection for the small things is known to us. The grief wasn't caused by the gifts. The job was the problem. The reminder that the last item on the list was myself. The only person who ever made me feel like I belonged was my grandmother, Jennifer. She lived in a nice brick house 2 towns away. Her hands were constantly baking, folding clothing, and tending to the garden. Mom never seemed too busy to sit with me, though, whether I was 5 or 25. She made me feel like I was significant. There were no forced smiles or analogies, just the warmth I so much wanted, affection and genuineness. "Brooklyn," she would remark while straddling the teacup with my hand, "you're not invisible. Not to me. Eventually, they'll realize how much they squandered." I held on to those words for years. Every time Martin got praise for doing the bare minimum while I was held responsible for things I didn't do. Mom ignored me whenever she brags about Martin's fraudulent business ventures in public. Every time my father told me to stop seeking attention when I was only trying to be heard, I thought of Grandma's voice. Hope, though, is fragile. When everyone around you behaves as if you're obstructing their path. I learned how to minimize my discomfort while avoiding conflict throughout the most of my teens and early adulthood. I helped make Martin's engagement feasible. I offered to do errands for the wedding. I remained mute when Mom gave me a used dress to wear as a bridesmaid, while she purchased an expensive gown for my future sister-in-law Vanessa only for photos. I finished everything. Though not because I was weak, I still believed that if I was polite, helpful, and pleasant enough, maybe one day they would love me too. I was wrong, since I didn't know they had far worse ambitions than just to ignore me. They wanted to completely destroy me. And the start of it all was a lie. A falsehood that would nearly destroy me because it was so obvious and so strategically constructed. However, not before it exposed every hazy facet of the truth they were trying to hide. The event happened on a Sunday afternoon while it was raining. It was one of those quiet, somber days that bring back memories like threads, and I had just finished helping Jennifer plant lavender in her backyard garden when she called me in for tea. The kettle hissed on the fire, and the air smelled like honey and new soil. I felt safer, more visible, and at peace in her home. We sat down at the small circular table by the window. She opened the side drawer and took out a large envelope. Her expression was solemn as she presented it to me, but I assumed it may be old recipes or letters. "I've been meaning to show you this for a while." "Brooklyn," she said quietly in response. "Now is the moment." Inside, where I carefully reviewed the formal documents, including a copy of her last will and testament, property deeds, and bank data. My fingers began to shake slightly as I began to understand what I was looking at: the house, her money, and a sizable stock portfolio. All things considered, jewelry has been passed down through the ages. I was to inherit the entire estate, which was worth around $4 million. My eyes welled up with tears. "Grandma, why me?" She stretched across the table and placed her palm over mine. "Because throughout your life you have earned what others took for granted. I seen how they treated you promoting Martin while making you feel unimportant. You never lost your temper. You never gave up. They will never understand how strong you are." I had run out of things to say. Once again, I was unable to speak. She might have split the estate and given it all to Martin to avoid any trouble, but she chose me, not because I asked. It wasn't anything I requested. I had just tolerated it. She was clear that she hadn't informed anyone yet, not even my parents, but I'm sure they'll sense it. As she said, she let out a sigh. She was right on the money. Martin, and that boy in particular, is really jealous. It seemed subtle at first. Martin stopped answering my texts. If I attended a family get-together, he would make jokes that sounded more like jabs. Everyone use caution. Brooklyn probably came here to take notes for her estate. Knowing Grandma's specific concept must be amazing. He suspected, but he didn't know for sure. And that suspicion turned into poison. Mom started saying that certain individuals were always trying to manipulate the old. Dad would chuckle when the wheel was red and say, "I can't wait to see who's really loyal." They thought they were being subtle. They weren't. Jennifer was encouraging me to let them talk. When they don't have your work, people will disparage you. However, it was more than words. Martin was planning something ugly. Everything I valued would be distorted and used as a weapon, and he would suddenly strike me. Martin's wedding day arrived with perfect weather and fake smiles. A beautiful lakeside home with crystal chandeliers, white flowers, and an aisle long enough for a fashion runway was the setting, as you might expect. Everything said, "Look at me," which was perfect for my brother, to be honest. I donned a lovely blue dress that my grandmother had given me. Elegant without being cheap or conspicuous. I offered to help where I could, calming Vanessa and arranging flowers. They had to set up the seating chart when the planner forgot the coffee. I didn't do it for Martin or for my parents. It was for Vanessa. She and I always got along great. Even though we weren't very close, she had never made me feel out of place. But I could feel the tension when I arrived. My parents barely recognized me. Sandra gave me a half smile, but that was it. Oscar stayed away from me entirely. Martin handled me like I was just another guest, not his sister, not someone who had gone above and beyond to provide a more seamless occasion. Jennifer was not part of the main crowd. She had a seat near the front, calm and quiet as usual. I glanced at her a lot during the ceremony. She nodded slightly, each time her eyes glowing with confidence. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Of course. Martin and Vanessa exchanged vows beneath an arch of white roses, and everyone gave a small applause. If only briefly, peace appeared to have arrived. However, peace does not last in a household when hostility is the norm. Later, at the reception, the DJ declined to play the music for the speeches. One by one, everyone toasted the pair. The best guy was telling jokes. Martin seized the stage after Vanessa's maid of honor spoke a sweet story. I knew something was wrong the moment he started talking. His face was devoid of a grin. Instead of passion, his voice shook with tightly controlled wrath. "I want to say something." He turned his gaze to the crowd. "I can't pretend that everything is well on the most important day of my life, however. How hard it is." There was silence in the room. Even the servers went cold. He continued by saying, "I found out this morning that a person close to me whom I trusted stole $150,000 from us. This was the budget for our honeymoon. It's gone." The audience let out a gasp that spread like a wave on water. Then he said it. My sister Brooklyn was there. My blood turned to ice. I felt sick to my stomach. His look gave me the impression that he was kidding, that this was some sort of confused effort at humor. But that was just for a single instant. Freezing. I was stunned as I stood there. "What are you talking about?" In front of everyone, he turned to face me. "Don't act foolish. You were in possession of the documents. The planning was aided by you. You were aware of the precise location of the planned payments." My voice cracked as I responded, "That's not true. Nothing was touched by me. Even where that money was kept was a mystery to me." Vanessa seemed perplexed. Her gaze flits between us. This was not what she anticipated. Nobody had. Then, with a harsh voice, Sandra rose from her table. "How were you able to Brooklyn at the wedding of your own brother? We are sufficiently humiliated by you." Oscar's mouth clenched. He made fists out of his hands. Something dark was growing inside of him, and I could feel it. Something far riskier than words. Martin wasn't only upset. He was playing a part. This he had practiced. He wanted everyone to believe that I was a criminal, and nobody could have predicted how far my father was going to take it at that very time. Not even me. I had little time to respond. My heart was hammering. In my throat, I sensed it. Every second felt like a spotlight piercing my skin since everyone was staring at me. Then it took place. Oscar. My dad got up so quickly that his chair squealed on the floor. His face was crimson in the face. Fury rages in the eyes. He strode like a man possessed across the hall without a word. Standing in the front with his DSLR camera mounted on a professional gimbal was the wedding photographer who had just finished taking the last group shot. Oscar rushed straight towards him. "Don't touch that, please, guy." Perplexed, the photographer called, but it was too late. Oscar used both hands to grab the camera off the gimbal, then pulled the device out of its stabilizing grip while continuing to hold it by the gimbal like a club. Whirled around and charged directly at me. I remained still. I was unable to. My entire body froze in awe. I just managed to mutter, "Dad." Then, with the heavy camera still fastened to its base, he swung and struck the side of my forehead with such power that it seemed like thunder clattering within my brain. Abruptly, I fell slamming backwards onto a tabletop. Broken plates fell to the ground. Someone shouted. The sharp, blinding anguish came in waves. My mind hurt. Blood ran down my temple, and my ears sounded like a fire alarm. I struggled to open my eyes. I tasted metal in my mouth. A gasp went up from the visitors. A few had their mouths covered. When they heard my ears ring, others flinched in fear. I could hear Sandra's voice. Aloud, toxic. She deserved it. "She is dishonest and a thief." I mentioned a monster. No one defended me. Just one individual. Enough. It was Jennifer. She pushed through the crowd with the strength that only a furious grandmother can muster. Her eyes weren't watering, they were burning. She dropped on her knees next to me and screamed, "Call 911. Now." When no one responded fast enough, she pulled out her phone and did it herself. She addressed the dispatcher in a stern voice. My granddaughter was attacked in front of 200 guests at a wedding. Brain damage. There is blood. I desperately need an ambulance and the police. The attack is being carried out by 3 individuals, the father, mother, and brother of her. I'll provide testimony against all of them. I remember sliding in and out of consciousness while clutching her hand. Her fingers were strong, steady. Within minutes, paramedics and police arrived. The flashing red and blue lights lit up the wedding location like a murder scene, and that was exactly what it had become. As I was put on the stretcher, Martin, Sandra, and Oscar were surrounded by officers. But before anyone could be taken out, an incredible event happened. At the front of the crowd, my grandmother, my rock Jennifer, walked up to the microphone. She cleared her throat. The guests stared at her, stunned into quiet. She raised her hand and spoke in a firm, unwavering voice. "Before these 3 are removed, I want everyone present to hear what I have to say." There was silence in the room. You could hear the lights buzzing, the distant sirens slowly fading in the distance, and the faint static of the microphone in Jennifer's fingertips. Everyone was observing her now. This woman appears sophisticated while dressed in lavender, standing like a judge in a courtroom, made of flowers and remorse. She stood with the officers as they prepared to take Martin, Oscar, and Sandra into custody. They didn't give her a look. They couldn't. This young woman, my granddaughter Brooklyn, has suffered a lifetime of neglect, verbal abuse, and now physical assault, not from strangers, but from the very people who are supposed to love her the most, Jennifer said after taking a long breath. There were murmurs among the crowd. A few guests nodded, slowly. Others just stared wide-eyed. Let me be clear. My whole estate, including all $4 million in treasures and house account investments, has been formally designated as going to Brooklyn. The only one who made that decision was myself. Not because she begged for it or attempted to mislead me, but because she has proven herself worthy of my trust and my heritage. Standing at the edge of the crowd, Vanessa raised her palm to her lips. Her eyes welled up with tears, both from astonishment and understanding. These three Jennifers talked as she turned to Oscar. Martin and Sandra have not only made themselves seem bad, they have attempted to ruin someone out of pure avarice and resentment. Additionally, I'll be advocating for criminal charges against every one of them. They don't deserve to be taken away just today. They ought to be accepted for who they really are: nasty, cowardly, and harmful. There was a murmur of agreement among the visitors. Some offered a soft clap. A few folks started crying. The cops nodded courteously to Jennifer and then took the three of them. Now completely stripped of their false grandeur, they made their way to the exit. That's when Vanessa stepped forward. Everyone turned as she approached Martin, whose hands were already clasped behind his back. Her heels struck the hardwood floor, which clicked harshly. Her face was flat and expressionless. Cold. She said nothing. Instead, she took off her diamond engagement ring, extended her hand, and dropped it on his feet. Clink! It fell on the bottom of his dress shoes after one bounce. Muttering, "We're done forever." Evidently ashamed and angered, her parents left Martin behind and departed with her. Martin said nothing. He couldn't. His crimson face was twisted in confusion and disbelief, as though he could not believe his lies had been revealed to the world. As the cops escorted them out, the room fell silent. Jennifer turned away from the microphone and hurried to my side as the paramedics secured my stretcher. "I'm going with her," she told the EMTs. "Don't even think about stopping me." They didn't. As the doors opened, the murmuring of the journalists and the shuddering of cameras echoed from beyond. But I had lost the ability to hear it. I could only feel my grandmother's fingers gripping mine tightly as we departed in the ambulance. And for the first time in my life, I had a powerful experience. Neither shame nor terror. Equity. Finally getting up. After the event, the ambulance departed the scene. But behind us, the wedding was crumbling into rubble. What was supposed to be a picture-perfect party had turned into a huge dispute. The venue staff were tearing down the decorations. Outside, visitors stood in tiny clusters, muttering incredulously and checking their phones for developments. Some were calling ride-sharing companies. Others just left without a single word. But there was one thing clear. The wedding was over. Avoid dancing, not a cake gnome. The initial dance. Only chains and shame. Inside the ambulance. The paramedics tried their best to clean my forehead of the blood. A quiet voice said, "You're lucky," in response. The camera hit hard. "You could have suffered a shattered skull." I nodded, pathetically. I'm still in a daze. Not just because it was painful, but also because everything was so disorganized. Jennifer sat beside me and held my hand the entire time. She didn't cry. She didn't pause when she spoke. She just stayed the same, strong like the roots of an oak tree, keeping your composure at the hospital. As soon as the ER. I was rushed into observation when I arrived. In order to rule out internal bleeding, my forehead incision was cleaned, stitches were placed, and a CT scan was conducted. Thankfully, the results were clear-cut. No long-term damage, but they warned me about potential migraines and bruising for days. Meanwhile, Jennifer walked outside to take calls. Through the time she returned. While I was asleep, she had already arranged for a police statement to be acquired, contacted a lawyer, and set up a session with Mark Wilson. After returning to my bedside, she stated, "You don't have to worry. I'm looking after it. You simply focus on improving yourself." But I wasn't done lying in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles and listening to the monitors beep. I made up my mind. Silence wasn't going to help me heal. I wasn't going to defend their actions during the wedding. I was going to defend every birthday. They ignored all the falsehoods. They spread all kinds of abuses. They acted as though they were advising. After Jennifer curled up on the gas chair and the nurses had shut out the lights, I unlocked my phone and began to write down everything that happened that night. The proof, the episodes, the pain, as tomorrow was our combat day. And this time, the truth was on my side. The next morning, sunlight crept through the blinds of my hospital room. It was gentle and brilliant, as though it didn't know the world had fallen apart the night before. My head ached. The sutures above my temple are still in place, but the soreness no longer influenced my judgment. It sharpened. I wasn't broken by it. I felt alive and conscious. Everything is ready. Jennifer was already dressed and standing by the window, holding her phone in one hand and her reading glasses on the top of her nose. She had been up early, making calls, preparing the next move, like a commander preparing for combat. She calmly tucked her phone into her purse and said, "You have an appointment at 2 p.m. Mark Wilson, the state's top attorney, is experienced in handling those who think they are above the law." I pushed myself into a seated posture. "Everything is being filed." She nodded. "Everything." By the afternoon, I was seated opposite from Mark Wilson, a perceptive guy in his 40s who radiated self-assurance all by himself. His office was filled with framed headlines of court triumphs and law books. But what reassured me most was the way he listened not just to respond, but to comprehend. I walked him through every aspect: the years of neglect, the whispered comments, the physical assault in front of over 200 people. My narrative was supported by names, dates, and even written notes that Jennifer had secretly taken throughout the years. Then I handed him the USB disk. It had everything. Recordings of the wedding guests, cell phone footage of Oscar swinging the camera, audio of Sandra calling me a thief, a video, a Jennifer's speech at the microphone, Vanessa dropping the engagement ring at Martin's feet, and multiple screenshots of Martin's previous texts trying to scare me into staying out of Grandma's legal troubles. Mark reviewed everything in silence. When finished, he leant back and folded his hands. "It is not only a family issue. This is malicious intent to stop slander, criminal assault, and inheritance. Charges apply to all three. Sandra Martin and Oscar." I nodded. "And what I want is a public. I've emerged from hiding." "That's great," he said, "because we'll be bringing both criminal and civil cases. One for justice, the other for damages. And believe me, the court will take this seriously." They nevertheless opted for violence in spite of having resources, witnesses, and power. Jennifer pulled out her file packet. "Ready, stapled, tabbed. Here's a copy of my will." It had already been notarized. "My $4 million fortune is listed with Brooklyn as the sole inheritor. They knew this was coming, so they tried to ruin her before it happened. Then we'll make sure they regret trying," Mark said calmly and firmly. And I signed each form that evening. Assault reports, court orders, and official affidavits. I even gave the hospital staff permission to publish my medical record as evidence, and I gave the police my whole video statement. I was more than just a daughter or sister now. I was both a plaintiff and a survivor. And for the first time in my life, I had power that they couldn't take away. The courthouse was filled with the smell of old wood and floor polish. Too chilly, too formal, too quiet. But as soon as I walked in with Jennifer and attorney Mark Wilson, I felt as though I was walking into something far more holy than a building. Here, the rumors would eventually die, and the whispers would give way to proof, where regret would no longer be an excuse for the truth. Wearing formal clothing that made them seem uncomfortable, Martin, Oscar, and Sandra sat at the defendant's table. Their stiff facial expressions suggested that they were still trying to preserve some kind of dignity. But it was their eyes that told the real story. Fear, disgrace, anger. On my side of the room, things were different. Jennifer sat behind me with her hands folded neatly in her lap and her chin up. Mark stood to my left, composed and self-assured, his papers carefully arranged and his laptop open. I took a deep breath and remembered the hospital monitoring and the sting of sutures. The sound of my father's irate voice struck me hard. I was no longer afraid of them. The trial began with the prosecution showing the wedding footage on the big screen. In a gathering that had been filled with cheers and celebration, there were gasps and a terrified silence. "She deserves it," said Sandra. And when Oscar hit me with the DSLR camera, several jurors winced. In the background, a woman in the gallery mumbled, "My God." Then came Jennifer's speech. "I'm legally moving my whole $4 million wealth to Brooklyn." The courtroom trembled as if it had just realized what was really causing everything. Then came the medical records. A Zoom testimony was given by our attending physician, outlining the danger I had faced, the edema, and the degree of my head damage. Then Vanessa showed up. Entering the courtroom, she resembled a whirlwind in silk. "Remain composed." Composed. Her proof uncovered every one of Martin's lies. "There has never been any honeymoon fund." The night before the wedding, Martin made up the story. After a bizarre phone call, he threatened to ruin Sandra in front of everyone and make Brooklyn pay. "Grandma might change the will if he could make her look like a thief," she said, speaking straight to the jury, he told me. Mark paused that statement for a moment. It was like taking a pin out of a grenade and placing it in the middle of the room. Then came Jennifer's testimony. Solid, calm, and sharp. She told the judge about the years of quiet misery she had witnessed in Brooklyn, how she was chosen as her inheritor because of her courage and integrity. She made it clear that this attack wasn't an accident. It was the last in a string of abuses. Finally, I stood up. When I was a child, Oscar and Sandra always made Martin the center of the world, and I told the jury about it. How I become unnoticed in my own home. I discussed the wedding minute by minute and the experience of being physically and publicly mistreated, as if they had no interest whatsoever in my existence. I'm not here to take revenge. I came here because I will never be free if I allow them to silence me again, I stated. In addition, I will not live a peaceful life to protect the honor of those who broke me when I sat down. The silence in the room seemed like stone. The defense tried to describe everything as a misunderstanding among the family, but the jury didn't think so. The audio, video, text messages, and witness accounts, they couldn't be avoided. The decision was made that same day. I feel bad. Oscar was convicted of violent assault and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Sandra received an 18-month sentence for complicity and emotional abuse. Martin, the mastermind, was sentenced to 2 years in prison for defamation, false accusation, and malicious intent to obstruct inheritance. The judge's final words are something I will always remember. In this court, violence committed in the name of family devotion is unacceptable. The law does not prevent favoritism or abuse. They were led out by the bailiffs. I didn't smile. I didn't weep. I just breathed. For the first time in a long time, justice seemed to be a reality. I carried the freedom I acquired in the courtroom with me everywhere. A week following the trial, Jennifer and I had a sit-down at her home. Months before, we were seated at the same table, our safe haven, where she had given me the bundle of legal paperwork. There were no warnings or clues as to what would occur this time. This moment, there was only peace. She pulled out a large folder of documents and placed a gold pen next to it, whispering softly, "This is the last transfer. The house, the accounts, the valuables. Everything is now yours. Brooklyn, it's done." I swallowed hard, not because I wasn't ready, but because for the first time someone trusted me enough to give me everything without asking me to be anything but myself. I signed the papers gently and carefully. "My girl, you've turned pain into power," Jennifer remarked as she leaned down and put her hand on mine once I was done. "Use it now." And I did. With the bequest, I didn't move to a house in the hills or go to the Caribbean. No, I kept some of the money and used it to make something durable. I discovered the Haven Project, a charity dedicated to helping women and young people who have suffered from emotional trauma, unjust accusations, or familial neglect. People like me, people who require a safe setting, to be heard, to recover without being silenced. We provide legal support to victims of domestic or psychological abuse, There is emergency housing accessible for those fleeing dangerous family circumstances, mental health counseling, financial planning workshops, and most importantly, community. Jennifer joined us as an honorary co-founder and counselor. She had no intention of retiring. Every morning, she arrived at work wearing her well-pressed shirt and pearls, along with powerful advice and fresh tea. Everyone referred to her as Grandmother J. Additionally, everyone adores her. We expanded rapidly. In just 6 months, our facility was providing services to over 100 families. I thought I was the only one. No one ever said for almost a week. Every time I told them, Jennifer reminded me that you're not invisible. Not anymore. I put all of my energy into that place because I was doing more than just healing myself. I was helping people rediscover their voices before guilt or shame buried them. Both of my parents are still inside and completing their sentences. Martin. His attempt to appeal his sentence was unsuccessful. He allegedly moved to another state after being freed, and as of the last time I checked, he was having trouble finding work. I didn't want him to suffer, but I also didn't forgive him. Vanessa. She came to see me once. We had coffee. She apologized. I told her she never owed me one. Since she believed in Martin, I didn't blame her. We parted ways amicably. In contrast, Jennifer and I continued to grow the Haven Project together, laughing over old memories and smiling at the news items we were helping to create. Because once you've escaped hell, there's no greater sense of peace than giving someone else a way out. It's strange how life can feel like a hurricane for so long that when things finally calm down, you don't know what to do. Sometimes I sit on the porch of the Haven Project after everyone has gone home. I sip chamomile tea from my grandmother's favorite china mug and watch the lights flicker across the flower gardens we built together. Lavender daisy, sunflowers, blooms that do not wither in spite of hard soil. Like myself, I often think about how I almost lost both my identity and my family's heritage. How easily a lie may get out of hand when it comes from the people you once trusted the most. The envy of a brother, the ignorance of a mother, and the anger of a father. The whole room is ready to believe the worst about a woman who never hurt them. But I no longer live in that story. I live in a different time period. One where the people who had broken me were exposed under the courtroom lights, justice replaced silence, and truth spoke out loud. One in which the woman everyone sought to destroy wrote her own history. Do you still get periodic pain from the scars? Are the memories still hurting? Yes, but they don't define me anymore. Now, who I am is determined by the women who come through our doors every week, enduring fear and disgrace, yet departing with honor. My identity is defined by Jennifer's hand, every time she says that you are enough. And sometimes I think about that hospital experience, broken, bruised, and degraded. And I see myself saying to that version of myself, just wait, Ma, in a whisper. They can't write your finale because I've already written it. I'm Brooklyn, and I'm no longer the neglected daughter, the scapegoat sister, or the kid they tried to silence. Despite those who thought they could destroy me, I am a leader, a survivor, and a builder of safe places. They simply increased my awareness of my inherent indestructibility. If this story moved you or made you reevaluate the value of justice and the truth, don't forget to like the video. Please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below for more powerful real-life stories every week. With your help, we will continue to raise voices that need to be heard. I appreciate you seeing, and I hope you never forget. The truth is never kept a secret for long. Story 2. I'm still playing that pointless game. My sister went out. I said, taking out my phone. I just made more money from that pointless game than you will this year. They're pleading now that I've cut them all off. I never imagined that the individuals who would most depress me would be those closest to me. People frequently discuss being ignored by superiors, questioned by professors, or assessed by outsiders. It feels even worse, though, when the people who ought to be helping you the most end up being the ones pulling you down. William is my name. I'm 28 years old, and my brother and sister have treated me like a joke for as long as I can remember. The youngest member of the family is me. The favorite is my 33-year-old brother Kenneth. He studied law and had outstanding scores, landed a lucrative office job, and got engaged to a member of a wealthy, influential family. Anna, my sister, is 31 years old and a real estate agent. She constantly boasts about how many people she knows, how many sales she has, and how she acts. Having the correct contacts is all that matters in business. And then there's me, the dreamer, the one they despise. The person they believe is squandering his time trying to achieve an unattainable objective. I've wanted to work as a game developer since I was a little child. I enjoy using my ancient PC to create little games, making small, independent games and learning from videos. I did it for more than simply enjoyment. For me, it was everything. However, in our household, it didn't matter if your goal didn't pay well. At every family gathering, I was made fun of for spending hours on my laptop while Anna received her first large check and Kenneth received accolades for winning discussions. The tale was the same. Kenneth would remark, "I'm still unemployed." Anna would advise me to obtain a real estate license as a contingency measure, even though I was doing some freelancing work. Although they weren't cruel, my parents believed that stable employment and a steady salary were the only ways to succeed. My father once told me, "William, you'll have to stop living in a dream," after glancing at me. I realized then that they didn't genuinely think I could succeed. They demonstrated it to more than simply what they claimed. My parents covered all the costs when Kenneth was accepted to law school, when Anna wished to begin her profession in real estate. In the first place, they assisted her. However, when I requested a little amount of money to upgrade my laptop and purchase better software, they informed me that they did not consider that to be a wise use of funds. They were telling me that I wasn't worth their time. I stopped asking after that. In order to save money for the necessary tools, I took night jobs at a local store. To keep getting better, I took any tiny tech jobs I could find. I didn't care that I didn't go out or socialize much. Each time Anna inquired or Kenneth glanced at me, "Are you still playing that dumb game?" It simply motivated me to put forth more effort. 2 years ago, there was a family reunion. With so many relatives, I hardly knew it was one of those large, exhausting gatherings where everyone wanted to know what I was doing with my life. I had just completed my first full-length independent game, which had taken me months to complete. Online, it was beginning to garner some notice, but I remained silent. Rather, I sat in silence while my mother babbled on about Anna's expanding real estate portfolio and Kenneth's work advancement. Kenneth chuckled and remarked, "William, he's still in the basement thinking he'll be the next Mark Zuckerberg," when someone eventually inquired about me. Everybody at the table chuckled. My parents grinned as well. I promised myself something at that very moment. I wouldn't fight, I wouldn't explain myself, and I wouldn't ask for their permission. I would let my creations do the talking. They were unaware that my game was about to blow up in a way I never would have predicted. I returned home that evening after the reunion and gave it my all. Every offensive remark. Every time my brother rolled his eyes and they made fun of me. I kept playing it over and over in my head. I didn't let it break me, though. I kept going with it. I thought I was just getting started, yet my game was already beginning to gain traction in small online groups. I spent many hours refining it, fixing bugs, modernizing the design, and streamlining everything. I sent free copies for testing to online celebrities and producers of gaming content. While some people never responded, others tried it and found it to be genuinely enjoyable. Then an incredible event occurred. A well-known YouTuber with millions of followers played my game live one evening. His audience embraced it right away. In a matter of hours, I began to get notifications all the time. It started to appear on the channels of more streamers. Players flooded my email with inquiries about upcoming changes. Overnight, my sales skyrocketed. It didn't seem genuine. The figures appeared to be from a dream. A little side project became one of the top-selling games on a well-known gaming website, in only a few weeks in just 1 month. I began making more money than Kenneth and Anna did in a whole year, but I kept my mouth shut around my family. I remained silent, concentrated on my task, and let them continue to believe that I was squandering my time in the basement. Our next family get-together was coming up a year later, and this time I wasn't dreading it. It had nothing to do with my desire to petty retaliate against them. Knowing exactly what was ahead, I was simply at ease. I purposely arrived later than everyone else so that the group could get settled. It was the same when I eventually entered. Kenneth was boasting about a well-known court case. Anna was posting images of her most recent real estate transactions. My folks appeared pleased with both of them. At last, my mother took notice of me. "William," she began clumsily, as if she had only realized I was there. "How is your small video game doing?" Kenneth smiled smugly. "Are you still playing with that?" Anna took her wine slowly. "Danny, there's nothing wrong with doing something else. If you need a fresh start, real estate is always there." I just sat down quietly, filled a glass for myself, and smiled. I gave them time to enjoy their typical moment. I was aware of what was going to happen. When Samuel, one of the few family members I genuinely liked, took out his phone and asked, "Hey, William, is this your game?" It finally happened. With my game at the top of the trending list, he swiveled the screen in the direction of the group. And then there was silence. Anna appeared perplexed. "Hold on, what's happening?" Wide-eyed. Kenneth leaned forward. "You're kidding," Samuel laughed. "Dude, this game is everywhere. I've been playing it all week. Why didn't you say anything?" All heads turned toward me. I lifted my shoulder slightly. "Yeah, I guess it blew up." My mom looked unsure. "Blew up. What does that mean?" I calmly pulled out my phone and opened my income tracker. I turned it just enough for them to see the number. Can a skin turn pale? Anna looked completely shocked. My parents froze in place. They were staring at 6-digit earnings from the game they used to laugh at. I sipped my drink slowly, enjoying the quiet. Kenneth was the first to react. His voice didn't sound confident anymore. "That's fake, right?" he asked with a nervous laugh. "I still locked on the screen. You're messing with us." Anna leaned forward, staring carefully at the numerals like they were about to disappear. "That's really a lot," she added gently. Then she swiftly altered her tone and produced a phony, businesslike grin. "But that's not steady income, right? I mean, how often do you really make that much?" I nearly smiled at how swiftly they attempted to minimize it all. I leaned back, feeling entirely in charge. "It's been quite steady," I remarked. "That's just from the previous couple months. I also gained from merchandise brand partnerships and those folks that wish to invest." I gave a tiny shrug. "It's been a terrific year." Kenneth scoffed, but I watched his jaw clench with stress. "Investors. People truly pay money on short-time video games now." I didn't have to respond at all. Still grinning, Samuel took over. "Indie games are so popular right now, man. Like Williams, some of the greatest games ever began. According to an article I read this week, businesses are looking for the next great independent success. It's this game." I sensed a total change in the atmosphere of the room. My parents, who had before dismissed my interest as a flimsy pastime, now appeared fully committed. My father coughed uncomfortably. "Well, that's really amazing, son. None of this has ever been brought up by you." I smiled half-heartedly, but it was a jagged smile. "If I had informed you sooner, would any of you have believed me?" That struck a deeper chord than I had anticipated. My mom turned her head away. My dad began to tinker with his watch. But Kenneth wasn't done yet. He was obviously uncomfortable with the fact that the sibling he had laughed at for years was now earning more money than he was. "All right," he replied, moving closer. "But let's be honest here. Cash is not permanent. You were fortunate. When no one cares what will happen," I gave a shrug. "I have additional games planned. If nothing else, I could easily quit my job early because I've already signed several significant contracts." I grinned. "Or perhaps purchase some real estate." "When people have more money than they know what to do with, isn't that what they do?" Anna tensed. She had devoted a lot of time to flaunting her real estate success as if it were the most brilliant career choice she had ever had. She seems to have tasted something terrible now. "It isn't that easy." She lost her temper. "To make informed decisions, you must be aware of housing trends." "Yes, I do agree," I interrupted her. I already consulted with a money professional because of this. Believed that doing things correctly was a wise move. I let that to fall. They constantly pretended that I was foolish and ignorant. However, I had now outplanned them both. Anna's jaw stiffened, but before she could say another word, my mother gave me a charming grin. "You're familiar with William," she added softly. "We were always aware of your skill. We only wanted to confirm that you were acting in the best possible way." I was about to roll my eyes. "Correct. I take it that's why you refused my request for assistance?" She immediately became silent after that. Kenneth laughed clumsily, attempting to regain control. "Consider the day's conclusion. Stability is what counts. You're all right now." "Yes. However, is it truly possible to sustain it indefinitely?" I selected law for that reason. It is stable. Samuel, who had been silently watching as if it were a television program, suddenly started giggling. "You sound envious, man." Kenneth's face flushed. "I'm not envious," he yelled. "I'm simply using common sense." Anna folded her arm. "Yes, envy isn't the issue. We simply do not want you to believe that this success will continue indefinitely." I cocked my head. "And why is it important to you at all?" Their phony backing began to crumble at that point. Anna moved around in her chair. "Because," she added in an extremely kind tone, "we're family. Family members also support one another." I could already see where it was going, but I didn't believe it for a single second. Leaning closer, Kenneth's face shifted from phony concern to sly curiosity. He tapped on the table and said, "Well, since you're currently doing really well, perhaps you might lend us a hand a little." It was there. Anna jumped right in and activated the phony goodwill. "Yes, William, you ought to give it some serious thought. We have always supported you." In fact, I burst out laughing. "Been there for me? Are you serious?" After hesitating, she quickly recovered. "We gave advice after all. We pushed you in the direction of stability. Isn't that encouragement helpful?" This was becoming amusing. I crossed my arms and leaned back. "So let me clarify this. Both of you ridiculed me, claimed I'd never be successful, laughed at what I had done. I owe you something now that I've here." Kenneth laughed awkwardly again, but I could feel his frustration. "Don't behave that way. We are your siblings. Family members help one another." When I requested a small amount of assistance to finance my endeavor, I raised one eyebrow. You both chuckled at me as well. Kenneth waved his hand as if it made no difference. "Back then, that was different. It seemed foolish. But it's only right that you return the favor now that you've produced something tangible." "Exactly," Anna said, her voice once again pleasant and syrupy. "We are also going through difficult circumstances. The current state of the property market is terrible. Some of my locations simply don't sell. A little boost would go a long way." She caressed my arm tenderly. "As if that would make me reconsider." "Only a little loan. Naturally, I would pay it back," Kenneth said promptly. "Yes, those payments for law school won't just go away. You have no idea how much it costs to maintain my profession. Your financial assistance would be much appreciated." I gazed at him, utterly astounded by Baldy's behavior. I shook my head slowly and continued. "Just so I get this straight. Both of your occupations are secure and stable. Both of you benefited much from your upbringing. Without any support from any of you, I made success for myself. And you think I should solve your problems now, Kenneth?" The smile vanished. "Nothing needs to be cleaned up. All we're requesting is some help. Families stay together." I paused and sat between us, observing their faces as they became increasingly uneasy. Then I spoke softly, but with a firm tone. "You're correct. Family members ought to support one another." I leaned somewhat closer. "So when I needed anything, where were you both?" Anna opened her lips to speak, but when I needed money, I didn't stop. "When I needed help, you both labeled me a fool. When I eventually started performing well, you made fun of me. You both brushed it off. But now that money is involved, I'm your brother all of a sudden." Kenneth's face became tense. "William, please stop being so dumb." I gave a little smile. "I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling the truth." Anna snorted. Danny, it's not as if we're asking for a fortune. I shrugged and casually took another sip. I understand, but I still say no. Kenneth's twisted face. Really, in light of what we've experienced. I gave a nod. Yes. At last, Anna's phony, amiable tone broke. You're so egotistical. She lost her temper. Where are your siblings? We have real professions and genuine responsibilities. Unlike you, we don't get to spend our days playing games. I smiled icily at her. That's right. Therefore, I owe you nothing. The room fell silent. No one said anything. Even our parents, who were obviously eager to be involved, remained quiet. They were aware that this was our fight. With a roar across the floor, Kenneth abruptly sprang out of his chair. Fine, he murmured, obviously in a rage. Do whatever you want. However, we won't be here when this video game thing goes down. I smiled. Oh, I don't care. He bounded off. Anna mumbled something beneath her breath and followed shortly after. Feeling lighter than I had in years, I returned my attention to my drink. Their opinions were irrelevant for once. I was already victorious. I grinned as I walked out of the restaurant, still sensing their resentment. The air was chilly at night. As I walked to the car, I saw that the streetlights were flickering. I was just done. I wasn't upset. I've had enough of their greed. Until they needed anything, I stopped allowing people to speak down to me. I mentally reenacted the exchange as I drove home. Their nerve still surprises me. Now that I had what they wanted, Kenneth and Anna genuinely believed they could alter the narrative. It nearly made me feel sorry for them. Nearly as soon as I entered my flat. There was silence. The only noise was the background buzzing of my gaming machine. After kicking off my shoes, I flopped down on the couch and unlocked my phone, intending to browse through it until I slept off. Then I noticed it. A fresh alert from a cousin's page. I tapped it out of curiosity, and when I read my name, which Anna had posted on Facebook, my stomach fell. It's sad when people lose sight of their origins. Some people behave superior to others and allow their success get to them. Smidge. Those who are greedy always fall the hardest. Remember, she was being brave, and it wasn't over yet. Kenneth had written, "Wild how money can make someone forget their family," beneath it. We were always there for him, and we received this gratitude. Unreal responses, some ambiguous, some obviously biased, were already beginning to accumulate. That is really disappointing. Individuals truly change when money is involved. Family should come first at all times. I inhaled deeply and gazed at the screen of my phone. When I refused to give in, this was their fallback option. They attempted to make me the villain. Normal. Even though I wasn't shocked, I still wouldn't overlook it. As I consider my next move, I tap the back of my phone with my fingers. I could be indifferent, allow them to spread rumors, and allow them to distort the facts any way they saw fit. Alternatively, I might warn them of the consequences of trying to play games with someone who already knows the rules. I let out a slow breath, eyes glued on the screen I was holding. I was tempted to respond right away as my hands lingered over the letters, but I knew better. I wasn't going to do something impulsively. I would ensure that Kenneth and Anna would deeply regret their decision to distort the facts and make me their adversary. I started by taking screenshots. Kenneth's phony worry, Anna's resentful post, and all the comments from distant relatives who hardly knew me but felt entitled to say something were all spared by me. They weren't being held as proof. This was a memory I wanted to preserve. The precise moment it became evident that they just saw me as a resource to be exploited financially, not as a person. I went over the responses once more. Over and over again, the same rehashed sentences. Family must always be united. People become chilly when they have money. He turned on us after we supported him. It was absurd. When I couldn't afford groceries, where were they? I was putting all of my efforts into creating my dream while I was confined to a small apartment and forced to eat cheap noodles every night. Then where was the support? Now I was asking for a little less than what they were asking for. They were where they mentally revised the tale. They now portrayed themselves as devoted, helpful siblings. And I'm the egotistical one that refuses to share. Let them maintain their delusion. I had no intention of arguing. I had no intention of correcting their falsehoods. I was leaving for good, not in a furious manner, but just finished. The final line was this one: no more wishing. Don't wait for things to change. No longer taking chances. It wasn't a tirade. I didn't request comprehension. I decided to completely cut myself out of their tale. I started by opening my social media applications. Kenneth put a stop to it. Anna has left. After that, I went through the names of the family members who had commented on the post. All of a sudden, people I hadn't spoken to in years were acting as though I owed them something. I disposed of them all, if they were saying anything about me. I wouldn't have to read it if they did it behind my back. I then launched the conversation for the family group. I went over the most recent messages. My name was mentioned both subtly and not so subtly, along with guilt trips. Why William would disregard us in this way is beyond me. We were all so close once. His success made him conceited. Some individuals lose sight of their origins. It was amusing, to be honest. No one ever visited or phoned. I didn't explain suddenly, acting as though I should apologize to them. I refrained from venting. I wrote a brief response. All of you are concerned about what I ought to provide you, but none of you gave a damn when I was broke. Just because I performed well at last doesn't mean you can go back in time. Go ahead and make me the villain if you want to. However, I'm finished. Do not message me once again. I then ended the conversation. For a minute, I sat still staring at my phone, hoping to sense something. Shame, sadness, anything. However, nothing was present. Rather, I experienced tranquility. For years, they had caused me to mistrust myself. I felt tiny and uncertain after hearing their statements, as if I were pursuing a meaningless goal. I could see plainly now. They never helped me. Only when I had nothing did they put up with me. They altered the narrative as soon as I was successful. Furthermore, I refused to allow them to drag me back into it. No more. The reaction was immediate. My gadget was buzzing repeatedly. Unknown callers kept trying, definitely. Anna and Kenneth are frantic to get through. More distant cousins began to message me after I banned their numbers. I was shamed by some. Others displayed bewilderment. William, please get in touch and make this right. Nothing is more important than family ties. What made you quit the group chat in that manner? That was really rude. You're going overboard. Simply acknowledge your error and make the necessary corrections. Express regret. For what purpose? For refusing to give them cash. For not acting as though their account of what happened was accurate. I never responded to anyone. Kenneth then posted another status update, even more dramatic this time. When individuals allow their money to alter who they are, it hurts. He believes he is superior than his relative, even though we have always supported him. But that's okay. Selfish people always learn a lesson from life. I burst out laughing. Karma. Whether he felt better after that. All right, give him time to wait. There was no turning back. As the days went by, there were fewer calls, there were less texts. The indignation eventually faded and was replaced by quiet. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, it was finally over. I had the feeling that I could breathe. No more phony smiles. Dealing with sarcastic remarks is over. I no longer feel the need to prove myself to those who have never supported me. I returned my whole attention to my task, the things that made me happy and at ease. And you know what life became better? I took a trip. I came across sincere individuals who offered me unconditional support. Instead of judgment and games, I created a life full of respect and compassion, as well as my sister and brother. Kenneth was still drowning in law school when I last heard from him. Long Anna was having trouble preventing her real estate transactions from failing. The same professions they made fun of me for not pursuing. They never apologized, and I never made contact, since they believed they had done nothing wrong. And that's all right. In any case, I didn't require their apologies. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Story 3. He has no place here. At the graduation celebration, my sister informed security that I paid $750 every month and $3,200 per term. My father made fun of me. You truly believed that you were welcome. I said nothing at all. I texted her and simply left. The typical way I find out about anything family-related is by accident, and that's how I found out about Donna's graduation. No direct message was sent. No. Are you going to be present for my mother? Not even a brief message from my father. A collection of haphazard pictures were thrown like confetti into the group conversation. Gold and navy decorations and outside tables. You did it, Jess, with a nice dessert, an ornate script. Aunt Martha had already shared photos on Facebook with the typical message, "My amazing niece is headed out to change the world," as was to be anticipated. Northeastern Lakeside University was where Donna had earned her degree. My parents somehow pretended that she was going to find a treatment for cancer, even though it wasn't exactly an Ivy League institution. For over 3 years, I had been paying her $750 rent each month without ever asking for anything in return. In addition, I had been contributing $3,200 every term to her college expenditures. My parents referred to it as doing our part for the family, but they weren't the ones who were living off of microwave noodles and skipping actual meals to make it work. I was that person. On time each month. No thank you notes, no phone calls, nothing but quiet. The money wasn't the point. I genuinely believed it had significance. I thought that perhaps if I continued to give, they would eventually realize how important I was. Up until the age of 9, I was the only child. Everything changed when Donna showed up. She became the favorite of everybody. I didn't appear to be as significant as even the dog. That trend remained constant. I became the reliable, quiet one. Nobody took attention. After waiting a few days until the group chat was overflowing with graduation photos, I messaged my mother to ask where the celebration was. She responded very immediately. Hillbrook. We were at the same location. The bridal shower for Vanessa. No apology, no explanation. She read the address as if it were a supermarket bill. I made no attempt to find out who would be present. I was aware beforehand. Uncle Wesley made a joke about bringing the cousins' foldable chairs. Yes, in plural. During the conversation, my parents chuckled about Grandpa's need for earplugs. I wasn't invited to the large party they were hosting. I barely make enough money to pay the bills in my small one-bedroom apartment in Elmwood where I live alone. However, I definitely take more pride in my car than I should, and I own a good one. I put on spotless pants and a white shirt before heading out to Brook Hill. They must have just forgotten that everything will be all right once I got there, I kept telling myself. The automobiles in front of the home told me it was the correct one. Uncle parked his black Yukon in the same reckless manner. Olivia's cousin has a beat-up Camry. Dad's pickup truck, but Grandma and Grandpa are nowhere to be seen. Odd. They never miss an event. The guy at the entry stopped me since they almost live for them. This celebration is private. One of them said, I said, I'm her brother. One eyebrow went up as if he didn't believe it. The other left after asking for my name. A few minutes later, he returned with my dad, my mom, and Donna. With her immaculate hair, Donna seemed as though she had just walked off a glittering catwalk gown. She held her phone as if she had more important things to accomplish. She gave me a brief glance before turning to face the soldiers. He's not welcome here, she added. In fact, I laughed, assuming she was being ironic. Then I noticed my father grinning. Did you actually show up? He inquired. After all of your recent statements, I said, I haven't said a word. My mother finally got in. This was supposed to be a happy day, Louis. We wished to avoid any problems. I'm the one making trouble. I pay her rent and I pay her tuition. Donna laughed. I didn't get it from you. The only reason you helped was to have something to keep me accountable. Your focus is constantly on yourself. You're welcome then. Flatly, I replied. She didn't answer. As if the scene had ended, they just turned around and went back inside. My father shrugged. Perhaps you ought to have inquired as to whether you were invited at all. I didn't speak louder. I refrained from arguing. After giving her a quick glance, I responded, "Okay." I then turned and walked away. I took a direct drive home. Never stopped, not even for gasoline. I went to my spot, kicked off my shoes, and just relaxed while gazing up at the ceiling. I then grabbed my phone and started typing. "You will be responsible for paying your own rent starting next month. I wish you luck. It happened this morning." Donna knocked on my home 2 hours later. She was in tears, not theatrical tears when wearing makeup, just real feeling. "Don't do this, please," she pleaded. "I'm not able to afford it. I can't, you know." "Why now?" "What are you doing, since I'm evidently simply a failure?" I left her standing in the hallway for 60 seconds without saying anything. And nobody deserves something like me. Around 9 in the morning, she had stopped by. I continued to browse job sites out of habit, sip leftover coffee, and dress in my old loungewear. She was wearing the same glitzy gold outfit from the previous evening when I opened the door. I briefly believed she was come to taunt me once more, but her makeup was sloppy and her eyes were red as if she hadn't slept. She didn't greet me. "Can we talk?" she said. But I didn't say yes, and I didn't stop her either. She entered the room as like she owned it, and she sat on the couch as though it were her own. Forgot to inquire how I was, did not give a damn whether I had eaten. She simply began to speak. "I need your assistance to pay my rent." I didn't respond. "You have no idea how difficult this year has been," she said. "Exams are functioning. The clinic has 2 shifts, hardly sleeping." As she attempted to make this something I caused, I leaned against the counter and listened. "Instead of abruptly interrupting me, you might have told me something. I didn't suddenly abandon you." "That happened yesterday in public," I said, quite loudly. She gave an eye roll. "Oh, please, it wasn't serious." "Apparently, neither was your spending strategy." She leaned back as if I had given her a face slap. It wasn't fun for me to say. I simply didn't want to suppress it any longer. She surveyed my place as if she had just discovered how little it was. She gazed at the ripped cushion and the little space heater in the corner. I continued looking for hints that my life wasn't really comfortable. "You've been a huge help." "Why now, since you verified it yesterday?" "What you mentioned wasn't new," I said. "It was only evidence." Her gaze was fixed on the ground. Her clothing tightened around her hands. The frosting was still adhered to it. "Why weren't Grandma and Grandpa present yesterday?" I inquired. She remained silent for some while. They were not invited. At last, she confessed. "According to Mom, they constantly gripe about Grandpa and the music. He talks too much." "You're referring to the man who got Dad his first vehicle. The guy who covered Mom's surgery costs. It's funny how when someone is no longer beneficial, they become a problem." She remained silent. I looked at the time. 9:43. It buzzed on my phone. Blocked. Caller. At 1001, I let it to ring. Once more it rang. The same figure. A voicemail followed. I switched on the speaker and pushed play. "Louis, it's me." Grandma said. "Neither were we invited. We were informed of the events. Some terrible things were said by your sister. What about your dad? He is no longer the same person he was. Know that you have our admiration. We'll be done soon. I'll bring coffee and muffins." Donna's expression froze. "They were told not to come," I inquired. She whispered that it wasn't just me. Mom didn't want Grandpa telling stories about Dad. She didn't want him stealing attention. I laughed, "So it's fine for someone to be ignored as long as it's not you." She stood up. "That's not fair. Nothing about this has been fair for a long time." At 11:12, I saw the silver Civic pull into the lawn. Grandma stepped out in her usual floral top, carrying a pink box like it was something precious Grandpa had on his old veteran hat. The one he only wears for special days or when he wants to get under Dad's skin. Donna didn't stick around. She quietly left, mumbling something about homework. Grandma didn't ask about her. She handed me the warm coffee, kissed me on the head, and sat down like she'd been planning to visit all along. "You don't owe them a thing anymore," she told me. Grandpa grunted. "She called you worthless." You're the only one who ever did something real without asking for applause. I smiled for the first time in over 24 hours. They stayed for a couple of hours. We didn't talk about the party. We talked about life, about real stuff. Once they left, I knew what I had to do. Donna wasn't going to be the one to talk to Mom and Dad. I would. After they left, I sat on the bed. The coffee was still warm in my hands, the box of muffins untouched beside me. The silence after they left felt heavier, like that still moment after a door slams in. Your ears are still ringing. Donna hadn't sent a message. I knew she was waiting for me to calm down, maybe hoping Grandma would talk me into letting it go. But something inside me had moved. This time I wasn't waiting for someone else to make things right. At 12 sharp, I contacted my dad. He picked up, seeming too pleasant, like we hadn't basically clashed the day before. Hey, Dan. Everything all right? Grandma and Grandpa stopped by. I said, brought over muffins. There was a brief quiet. Oh, that's good. They weren't at the party yesterday. Yeah, well, there wasn't much space. You know how Grandpa gets. I know precisely how he is. Flatly, I replied. He didn't answer. I continued. In order to avoid misunderstanding as well, Donna is no longer being paid for by me. Not school, not rent, not a single penny. I heard background sounds from the kitchen again. Mom is most likely warming up leftovers from the previous evening. Louis. He started to speak more softly. You're not having any difficulties, are you? You don't have any children or house payments. You always have sound financial judgment. I'm expected to make her life better since I didn't ruin mine. I'm not saying that, he said hastily. All we want to do is give her an opportunity to turn her life around. No, I said. That's what I offered her. You only watched and chuckled. He remained silent. I stated that I will personally explain everything to Mom. I just thought I'd let you know first. Before he could think of anything further to say, I hung up. I didn't see what was going to happen next, but I also didn't expect anything better from Mom. After 20 minutes, there was a knock on the door. Donna wasn't the one. My cousin Olivia was there. She appeared anxious as she shifted her weight from foot to foot and held a plastic plate in her hands. Hey, she said. Do you mind if I enter for a little while? Before I could respond, she sat down and looked around the room as if she had never been in a place this tiny. I wanted to apologize for yesterday's incident. I arched an eyebrow. I had no idea that they would bar you. I too chuckled when Donna stated what she did. It wasn't because I believed it to be true, though. It was simply so uncomfortable. I was at a loss for what to do. I responded, You didn't look uncomfortable. Slowly she nodded. Yes, I've grown rather adept at acting as though nothing is wrong. Then she made a surprising statement. Next month I'm moving out, she added. I'm over the family drama, I told Aunt Martha. I submitted my application to a Vermont graduate school. That caught me off guard. Olivia was usually in the background, smiling kind and never acting inappropriately. I didn't know she was going to move, much less start over in another state. She went on, Donna's taking it badly. She informed your mother that you were ignoring her. Although your mother is blaming you, she is ignorant. After taking her phone out of her pocket and tapping it a couple of times, she gave it to me. It was a group messaging snapshot. Donna, a name, and a couple of her pals. I failed to realize. Donna. He did really show up. He would, Donna assured you. So eager to be involved in everything. Donna. I hope he heard me. He's a failure. He still gets treated like garbage even though he pays my expenses. Olivia kept a careful eye on my face. She claimed not to be aware that I was still in that chat. Last year, she accidentally added me. Most likely I forgot. I gazed at the display. It wasn't anger. Not even shock was involved. It was only evidence. Unpleasant, unquestionable evidence. I returned the phone. I appreciate you showing me. Will you show your mother? She inquired. After I gave her a single nod, Olivia got to her feet and appeared to feel relieved. She added, I'm not telling you this to be cruel. People need to know who they're defending, which is why I'm telling you. I led her to the door, shut it after her, and sat for a time in silence. I then entered one sentence into the family chat window. Allow me to demonstrate what your ideal daughter truly believes about me. I then shared the screen grab. No introduction, no justification. Her precise words in plain English. They kept praising the same sister. The same person who laughed as I paid her expenses, boasted about exploiting me, and branded me useless. It was not petty. It seemed long overdue. There was silence in the group chat. 10 complete minutes. Nothing. Aunt Martha then abruptly ended the conversation. No. Farewell. Simply gone. Olivia sent me a direct message. Holy. All she said was that. I didn't wait for responses from other people. Didn't give a damn about the half-baked excuses they were entering. Deleting. I reached for my keys, climbed into the vehicle, drove in the direction of my parents' home. No conversation, no music. I had been avoiding the route and the thoughts for years. As if anticipating my arrival, my mother answered the door. Her eyes were bright and weary. I didn't say anything as I passed her. Sitting on the couch, my father pretended that he had been heard. There was no sign of Donna. I assumed she was trying to avoid me. Or perhaps they were concealing her. I didn't sit down. I acted without waiting for approval. I just expressed my thoughts. I described how, for the majority of my life, they had made me feel invisible, that I had been pushed aside ever since Donna was born. Only when it was helpful was it noticed. The remainder of the period was ignored. They didn't even bother to ask me to the one day that honored everything, even after I told them that I had paid for her living expenses and her tuition. In any case, they stood there while others made fun of me when I arrived. I informed them that I was done not just with aiding Donna, but also with maintaining the illusion that everything in our home was normal and defending it as the way our family operates. I'll stop lying to myself. I suggested that they take as much time as necessary to understand the true meaning of parenthood. After that, I described my plan of action. I've shared the screenshot on Facebook already. People would understand that I didn't mention any names, I said. They will read about a sister who made fun of him for even showing up and a brother who paid for everything. Then my father shifted uneasily. I continued chatting as my mother tried to speak. I said, I'm not stopping there. Additionally, I'm publishing the entire narrative on Reddit, right from the start. Every time you acted selfishly and made me feel unwelcome simply because I was your child. Let's see how many people still think this is true after this is out if you want to play the happy family game. They didn't respond. They only gazed. It will be read by others. They will discuss it. And they won't point the finger at me. They'll say what I already knew. You never gave me the respect I deserved. I was about to go, but stopped at the door. I responded, maybe you should have given me something better to write about if you're upset that I only posted the horrible parts. After that, I departed, leaving them silent. I opened Reddit and began typing as soon as I got in the car. Not because I was in need of attention. For once, I had something honest to say, and I wanted the world to hear it, not because I sought sympathy. Finally, they had to know what it was like to be exposed, as I had been for years. The sky had become that serene, gentle gray that makes everything seem to be still by the time the light outside had dimmed. I was done writing. The post went live. I didn't shield anyone, but I also didn't use their names. I detailed how I paid the expenses, how I wasn't even invited, and how I arrived and was greeted like an outsider interrupting a celebration. How it wasn't about a single evening. Thus, my parents stood there silently. It has to do with decades of being supposed to be content with scraps and constantly coming last. I had no idea how much attention the post would receive. Dozens. Hundreds more comments than surfaced. Individuals talked on their personal experiences. They had also been silent for far too long, according to others. Some expressed their desire that they had spoken up sooner to avoid being crushed by the quiet. On my behalf, some were incensed. I should have left years ago, they said. However, one message remained with me. Someone who claimed to know Donna sent it. They discovered they had participated in the same group chat she boasted about after seeing my post. They said that for months she had been telling her acquaintances that I was essentially her personal ATM, and that she earned it as she was the only member of the family who was worth investing in. I wasn't upset about it. I wasn't even shocked by it. It simply validated everything. I experienced a profound stillness at that very moment, the type that occurs when you let go of something that has been holding you back. I knew I was done at that point. I disabled all of the alerts. I then gave Grandma a call. As if she had been waiting for the phone to ring, she took it up. Everything I told her was posted. Reddit has it. Everything. The reality. She didn't stop. Good, she said. I informed her that I would not be attending any more family dinners. No more vacation time. No more listening to them laugh behind my back as I sat in quiet. I wasn't simply backing off. I was finished. I told them I wasn't doing this to punish them. I'm doing it in order to finally set myself free. I then asked, what hurt the most? Leaving people who never truly wanted you in the first place shouldn't hurt this much. A moment later, Grandpa was on the line. He answered that was because you wanted them, and it explains the intensity of the pain. We were separated by silence. Grandma then subtly introduced, this hurt doesn't have to stay with you forever. Now put it down. I told them I loved them both and that I would give them another call soon. They were the only two family members I still believed in. Something changed inside of me as I hung up the phone. Not cured, not resolved. However, it felt as though I had finally released something I had been holding on to for too long. As the sky grew darker, I sat there and gazed out the window. Then an unexpected event occurred. My phone rang once more. Block number. I chose to ignore it. It rang again. The same caller. I answered the third ring out of curiosity. Carl was the one. An old high school friend. Bro, it had been over 5 years since we last spoke. Oh, he said. Are you the Reddit Louie? Who was it who written about their family members? I blinked. Yes, I read your tale, dude. I took my sister to see it. Oh my God, she thought, is that 8th grade Louie? We didn't know. You had experienced all of that. Hello, would you want to go out to supper this evening? My reward? Let's catch up. Really? I paused. I got a sense of surprise that I hadn't had all day. Yes, I said. To be honest, I would like that. I sat across from a person who knew me before everything went wrong that night. Neither my parents nor Donna were raised by us. We made jokes about movies. We used to surreptitiously observe Carl's work at Human Resources, and we detested every second of it. Plus, a variety of other unrelated items. It was the first time in ages. I didn't feel the need to apologize for my existence, so I laughed. I wasn't upset when I arrived home. I had the feeling of some. Story 4. Eric is my name. I suppose you could say that at the age of 29, I've always been the supporting cast member in my own family. It's not the black sheep, you know the sort. That's right. It's more like the invisible one. Moving Dayline's tools and discreetly picking up the tab when Dad forgets his money are all handled by the guy who has been remembering every birthday since Rose's on Mother's Day. I'm not ostentatious. The noisy one isn't me. I'm the trustworthy one. Perhaps this is the reason it took me so long to see that I was being taken advantage of. Or worse, left out. It began modestly. This is a missed invitation. There was a group conversation that was forgotten. Oh, the text didn't reach you. I ignored it because I assumed someone had told you. Because when you love someone, you do that, don't you? You make the best assumption. You tend to assume the worse. Your anxieties don't speak for you. Sometimes, though, stillness is just the sound of someone trying not to cry in front of a dozen people you didn't even know existed, all wearing similar shirts. Ellie, my niece, was the recipient of the baby shower. In our long, complicated family tree, we have always referred to each other as aunt and uncle, even though she is actually my cousin's daughter. I arrived with a thoughtfully wrapped present, a blanket that I had commissioned from a woman who performed custom embroidery at the farmer's market. Across the corner, Ellie's name was embroidered in a gentle lavender calligraphy. I took pride in it. Felt as though I had at last perfected a considerate, unique present. The location was a charming little bistro with a leased outdoor terrace behind it. Lights made of strings, centerpieces made out of mason jars. Fluttering in the wind are pastel streamers. When I got there, everyone was already there. I noticed my sister Jen chatting animatedly with her cousin Rachel at the drink table. Jen gave me the wave you give a mailman when I waved. Short, far away. It's almost theatrical. Nevertheless, I maintained a kind grin. I gave the blanket to the few relatives who genuinely recalled my name without being asked, signed the guest book, and struck up a conversation. I didn't bring up the picnic until halfway through the afternoon while I was assisting one of the elder uncles in balancing a paper dish of small quiches. Anticipating next weekend's family picnic, I said nonchalantly. I skipped work for the day. Uncle Dave, who has always been the tough but endearing kind, laughed quietly. Yes, that was yesterday. I blinked. What? He cocked his head in my direction, as though he wanted to know if I was kidding or simply naive. Nobody told you, did they? Did I just stand there? My mouth parted, then shut again. I looked at the faces around me. Some people averted their gaze. Others, such as my cousin Maddie, simply gave me pitying looks. The last gut punch followed. I used to watch my cousin Nate when he was 6 years old, and he took out his phone and flipped it around to show me a group photo. They were all there, smiling faces, folding chairs, a huge picnic cake in the shape of a slice of watermelon, and matching navy blue shirts with the words, Family Picnic 2025, written in white cursive across the chest. Everyone, Mom, Dad, Jen. Louisa, the great aunt, hasn't left her home in 2 years. I swallowed hard. Oh, I managed to say, forcing a chuckle that sounded as brittle as dried leaves. Then Jen walked by. She glanced at the photo and said with that smug little half-smile I've come to loathe, it was kind of a close family thing. I turned to her stunned. I am close family. She raised an eyebrow. Sure, but you know what I mean. No, Jen, I really didn't. I excused myself a few minutes later, pretended I had to take a call, then just walked to my car the whole drive home. My hands clenched the steering wheel so tightly I could see the whites of my knuckles. My head buzzed with questions. I'd asked myself a dozen times before, but never dared say aloud. Was I just boring? Had I done something to offend someone? Did they even notice I wasn't there? But somewhere between the freeway exit and my apartment parking lot, something in me clicked, not snapped. This wasn't rage. It was quieter than that. Cooler, like a fog finally lifting. I realized something vital that day. It wasn't that they forgot me. It was that they deliberately chose not to include me. And worse, they didn't even feel the need to hide it anymore. I sat in the parking lot for almost an hour staring at my phone, scrolling through old messages, group texts, Facebook posts, calendar invites. Everything from the past few months started to make a horrifying sort of sense. The birthday dinner, I'd never been told about the group vacation they'd already booked by the time they mentioned it to me. The sudden coldness from people I used to be close with. It wasn't an accident. It was a pattern. And I was done pretending not to notice. That night, I opened my laptop and pulled out a notebook. I made a list. Names, obligations. Favors, the quiet ways I've been propping up this family like an unpaid intern. Dad's car insurance. Auto drafted from my account. Mom's streaming subscriptions on my family plan. Jen's dog. I'd walked it every weekend for months when she was too busy. Cousin Ryan's job application. I'd rewritten his entire resume. I wasn't just forgotten. I was being used. And suddenly, I didn't feel like being useful anymore. I started with the little things. Quiet moves, subtle. I removed a few shared accounts, changed my Netflix password. Took myself off the family phone plan I'd been subsidizing since college. Nobody noticed. Not yet, but they would. Then came the bigger things. I pulled out the spreadsheet I'd kept of all the bills I'd paid over the years. The things I told myself didn't matter, and I drafted a few polite but firm emails. Not furious, just professional, detached. And then I made one final decision. Something personal, something symbolic. The type of gesture that would communicate everything I'd never stated out loud. The next family occasion was only a week away. At least baptism ceremonial church reception after I was on the guest list. This time, shockingly. Probably because I still had the superior camera and they wanted excellent photographs. I RSVP'd, yes, smiled, played along. But what I had prepared for that day, let's just say it ensured no one would ever forget me again. And that's where things really got interesting. The morning of Ellie's baptism was sunny and clear. The type of spring day you only get a few times a year. It was one of those ancient stone churches with huge archways that echoed your footsteps and stained glass windows. Wearing a fine gray suit that I had worn to my cousin's wedding 2 years prior, I arrived early. They couldn't afford a professional photographer, so I would take their picture for free. Naturally, I brought the camera, not wanting to violate tradition. The pews inside were filling up fast. Near the front, I noticed Jen snickering and whispering something to Mom. That drew my attention and provided me with a harsh acknowledgement, not a pleasant grin. As if I were a hotel doorman he hardly recognized. Even though I was left out, I knew how to act the part, so I strolled past them all and sat down close to the aisle where I would have a good view for pictures. However, I wasn't there only to snap photos this time. The service proceeded without incident. Everyone shouted and cooed as if it were the Broadway show's finale, but Ellie shed a few tears when the priest poured the water over her head. More out of habit than anything else, I took a few pictures. I kept looking at the front row, though, while everyone else was concentrating on the altar. Jen, Mom, Dad, Rachel, a cousin. As if they were all in on a joke together, Aunt Marie was giggling, whispering, and nudging each other. I wasn't giggling. I was learning by heart. Everyone went to the church hall for the celebration following the wedding. It was tastefully adorned despite its modesty. Flower centerpieces, white tablecloths, and a large buffet table laden with finger sandwiches, deviled eggs, and little pink frosted cupcakes. Already the present table was piled high. A huge, stuffed elephant, perhaps worth more than my monthly food, had been brought by someone. I entered with a beautifully wrapped present in my hand and a canvas bag over my shoulder. I proceeded to the side of the room where the photo show was playing and carefully positioned the box among the other presents. Pictures of a baby bump, parties for gender reveal, maternity shots. My sister mumbled something loud enough for me to hear as she passed me carrying a dish of food. This time, try not to be weird. I didn't even give her a glance. Don't worry, I won't be invisible for long, I responded with a smile. She scowled a little but continued to move. Perhaps she mistook me for a joke. I meant every word, whether it was harsh or just exhausted. The host watched as the buffet line dwindled and everyone took their seats. Rachel, my cousin, got up and clinked her glass to get attention. She smiled and continued. We want to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate sweet baby Ellie. We are incredibly appreciative of all of your love and support. Courteous cheers. Faces with smiles. I stood close to the light switch at the room's edge. When I synced to my laptop the previous evening, Rachel said my fingers were already encircling the little remote control I carried in my pocket. We would now want to present a brief film homage to our incredible family and everyone who helped make this happen. A few faces may be familiar to some of you. The presentation turned to dark as she pointed to the projector. My version started then. People were first unaware of the change. Birthdays, old reunions, family barbecues, and a few harmless pictures were the beginning. The captions then modified, though. July 4th, 2023. All but Eric were invited. Dinner on Mom's birthday. We assumed you were occupied. 25. Family picnic. Nobody told you, did they? Every slide has a timestamp, labeled and dated. I took the screenshots from texts on Facebook. Even that dumb family WhatsApp group from which I had been kicked out without warning. The room started to change. You sensed it. People are looking anxiously at Jen, Mom, and Dad, craning their necks and muttering. Then came the real kicker, a presentation that only showed a running tap and a spreadsheet that listed all of the costs and favors. Everything from loan repayments to Christmas meals that I had contributed to or paid for over the years. I never requested a refund. A brief comment marked the conclusion of each row. Never paid back. Never expressed gratitude. The room was quiet by the time the sum appeared on the screen. 11,700. I left it hanging. No voiceover, no music. In a room full of individuals who are choking on embarrassment, they are just cold numbers. The last slide included a picture of me grinning while holding a birthday cake by myself. "Don't worry, I brought my own party," the caption said. The screen then became black. With the remote still in my fingers, I took a step forward. I said quietly, "Too quiet. Perhaps I appreciate you watching." I just wanted to make sure that this time I wasn't overlooked. A pin may have been dropped. Mom got to her feet. She had a pallid face. "What was that, Eric?" I gave her a direct look. That was the reality. Her father parted his lips, then shut them again. As if I had grown a second head, Jen simply gazed at me. Turning to Rachel, I gave her a USB containing all of the original images and documents. You can choose to keep them or remove them. After that, I grabbed my canvas bag and made my way to the door. Once more, people were whispering, but not about how I was too quiet or always late. It had to do with what they had just witnessed, what they had disregarded, and what they had permitted. Jen clicked angrily on the tile as she followed me out on her heels. "That was a mess. You embarrassed the entire family, Eric." I turned to face her as I paused just outside the door. I reminded the family, Jen. There is a distinction. She folded her arms. "What exactly are you attempting to demonstrate?" I inhaled. "It's the type you take before shutting a door that you know won't open again. That I mattered and that I was present. That after the party is over, I'm not the guy that everyone remembers." After that, I departed. However, it wasn't the end. Not even close. For what followed. After that video, what happened? The actual repercussions started at that point. The beginning of the call. The beginning of the stories unraveling and the emergence of secrets. Things moved from awkward to explosive at that point. I didn't immediately return home. I let the spring air chill the silent storm inside of me as I drove around the city with the windows down. I wasn't upset. I'm not the same person I was. Not that smoldering anger that silently tore at me. No. I sensed something crisper and more distinct now. A peculiar sort of tranquility that only results from a long overdue conflict. Finally, I had stated it without yelling, pleading, or hoping that anybody would get it. I'd put it all out and went out on my terms. However, peace has a way of upending those who feed on dominance. I received 9 missed calls when I returned to my flat. 1 from Rachel, 2 from Mom, 1 from Dad for Jen, and an unidentified number that I was very certain was Marie's attempt to hide her call. They were sent to voicemail. I wasn't prepared for guilt trips, tears, or excuses. Not quite yet. The group chat was then revived. Indeed, it was the same family group chat from which I had been secretly ejected 6 months prior. It seems like someone thought that now would be the ideal moment to read me. As I made tea, the notice appeared. "You are now a member of the family." Jen sent the initial message. "Well, that presentation was very inappropriate. This wasn't your therapy session, it was a baby's baptism." Mom then added her voice. "Eric, that was really upsetting, honey. You made us seem foolish in front of everyone. You may have simply had a private conversation with us. I get that you're furious, Rachel, but letting it all out at a baby shower. Not cool." Then Dad arrived. "Adult up." That was it. Only those 2 words. Adult up. No apology, no explanation. Just the guy who told me I needed to grow up for a while and let me pay for his auto repairs without saying thank you. I gazed at my mobile device. I was on the verge of responding. Must compose a lengthy article with precise wording that dismantles the yearly cycle of unspoken animosity, every second of being overlooked. I willingly offered every kindness and smile I had only to be treated like a seat filler in their lives. But then I understood that words would not make a difference. They were already certain of my identity. Keep quiet, Eric. Eric that's helpful. The man who never refuses. Only when he dared to speak out or when they needed anything did they notice him. I thus didn't answer. I departed from the gathering. Then the texts began to come in, each one more desperate than the one before. Try it again, Jen. You got your message across. Stop now, please. You're exacerbating it. Next were mothers. Even if you've always been theatrical, this is excessive. All we wanted to do was keep you from feeling uncomfortable. Keep my own family away from me. Then Rachel, in her typical kind manner. We could chat if you could join us for supper. Only us. I paid them all no attention. A mediocre sit-down meal where someone microwaved store-brand lasagna and imagined it could absorb decades of neglect was not what I wanted. Can't we just go on? I didn't want the defensive jokes, the weak grins, or the abrupt turns, since I wasn't going anywhere. Not quite yet. The actual change occurred 3 days later. It started when my former coworker Sam called. "Dude, why is your sister inquiring about your job?" he remarked. What I got her LinkedIn direct message stated that she wanted to know whether everything was well at work and was worried that you were behaving out. She inquired as to whether your recent endeavors had been impacted by your mental health. I went cold. What is she? Sam let out a sigh. That's cold, dude, but I remained silent. Unless she wanted assistance making her resume appear nice, Jen had never even come to my office and had never inquired about my position. She was now attempting to rewrite the story before I had a chance by contacting my coworkers. I looked at Facebook that evening as well. The family was trying to minimize the harm. A picture from the baptism had been cleverly edited to remove the slideshow event from Rachel's lengthy emotional description. Family is the most important thing. Even if we're not flawless, we do show up, and occasionally folks who feel excluded lash out. Let's all keep in mind to love one another throughout difficult times. There was a lot of passive-aggressive sympathy in the comment area. Rachel, I'm praying for you to be strong. Some folks simply require care. The larger individual is you, preserving you. I remained silent. It wasn't even pleasant to me. However, I took a screenshot of every last phrase. My family had never understood that being silent does not imply ignorance, that I wasn't paying attention just because I wasn't the loudest person in the room, observing, listening, recalling. I began planning the next move as they frantically rewrote the tale to portray me as unstable, resentful, or self-centered. Clarity, not retaliation for the sake of retaliation. A silent justice of sorts. I began to gather receipts, not only those that are sentimental, actual ones. Email threats, text messages, Venmo transactions, and bank statements. Every penny, every favor, and every instance in which I had stepped up and received doormat treatment in return. Then an unforeseen event occurred. Rachel Ellie's mother. I got a call from Sister Sophie. It had been months, perhaps a year, since we had spoken. She sounded different, though. Hesitant. As if she had witnessed a building catching fire and was unsure whether to scream or reach for a bucket. "Eric," she muttered. I apologize for blinking, but I just wanted to say that I saw what happened. "Are you—" It was not a picnic that I attended. I was also not invited. According to Jen, it was a minor matter. However, I became aware of how long you've been coping with this after viewing that slideshow. I was at a loss for words. For the first time, it was recognized aloud by someone, anybody. She went on, "There are more people than you think who have been forgotten and pushed out. Suddenly, this wasn't just about me, so you're not the only one who has been trapped with me. I wasn't excluded from a single family photo or an unappreciated birthday. Picking favorites and throwing the others away like leftovers at the back of the refrigerator was part of the family's habit and tradition. I had just been the one to speak out at last. And now people were now observing. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years began to message me. An elderly relative who resided in 2 different states. Even my godmother claimed that because of the way they treated people like you, she hadn't attended family events in years. Each message made me more determined. I wasn't insane. I wasn't going overboard. They had avoided the mirror for years, and I was it. They were rushing to break it now that I had held it up. I realized then that I hadn't gone far enough. What happened next? That was the part that really ensured I would never be forgotten. Tell me, though, if you want to know what I did next and how the family's ideal of perfection fell apart. Because the actual fireworks began there. It took me a whole week to vanish. Only from them, not from the world. The family members continued to blow up my phone, so I muted and stopped answering texts. I then let the dust settle as they tried to place blame on one another. Jen made 6 more attempts to phone me. Under the pretense of emotional blackmail, Mom left 2 lengthy voicemails filled with phony worry. This family has endured a great deal. Don't dismiss it because of a miscommunication, Eric. The direct communication from Dad was my favorite. Your mother was embarrassed by you. Make it right. Nothing was fixed by me. I became silent because I was preparing and working. Not an angry outburst or tantrum, but a thorough, composed, and well-considered reckoning. You see, I was familiar enough with my family to know precisely how they would act. They attempted to defame me covertly, trash me behind the scenes, and publicly repair their image by accusing me of being unstable and secretive. However, I had something unexpected for them. Documentation. Do you recall the spreadsheet from the presentation? And it was only the beginning. I retrieved all of my emails and receipts from helping Rachel's husband get his first job following his DUI. Every time I helped Mom with unforeseen ID expenses, the years of payments for Dad's auto insurance, or the time I saved Jen from a credit card debt so bad that 3 collectors called her in a single week, I sent money to aid her. They didn't even express gratitude, not once. I put everything together in a clear, concise, and factual document. No taunts, no charges. Just the facts. A chronology. A trend. I also included a little quotation or message they had sent at the time for every line. Messages that demonstrated the disparity. Could you just do this one thing, Eric? You're very helpful all the time. No one else has the time. I typed only this at the conclusion of the paper. I did all of this because I felt like I belonged to a family, not because I had to. Now I realize I was only a resource. I'm not available for that position anymore. Please find attached my letter of resignation from the unpaid position of family doormat. After that, I distributed it to everyone, not just the main family group after uploading it to a shared Google Drive. I emailed it to all of my relatives, including cousins, aunts, uncles, and even those who hadn't spoken to me in a long time. Particularly them. In case anyone is wondering why I won't be attending the upcoming close family get-together, I've attached a brief email heading. That was it. The reaction was prompt. It began modestly. Some texts from relatives who live far away. Messages like, "Damn, I had no idea," or "This explains so much," were all I could hardly recall. You simply wrote what half the family has been thinking for years, one person even commented. The repercussions followed. This time, Mom called in a rage, even angry. "How dare you tell everyone about our personal matters?" "It was a family enterprise," I answered coolly. "That's right, and the entire family is on board for the first time." She ended the call. Jen lost it in the group conversation, accusing me of being vengeful, manipulative, and victim-obsessed. However, her outburst just made matters worse for her as others began to voice their opinions. Sophie reminded everyone that Jen had purposefully left her out of festivities as well. Leo, my cousin, sent screenshots of Jen making fun of a family member in a private message. What everyone else was thinking was uttered by Aunt Marie, bless her. Although it may have been awkward, this had to be spoken. Dad didn't say anything. He fell quiet. I knew it had fallen that way. He doesn't stop talking until he realizes he's in a tight spot. However, Rachel's husband's actions were what ultimately turned the tide. Recall that the person I assisted in getting a job just responded 1 word in response to the email. "Eric, you're not incorrect." I regret not saying something sooner that would have solved the problem. People began to come up and share their personal stories of being exploited, ignored, and snubbed. It seemed as though the family's flawless exterior had been broken, allowing everyone to breathe at last. The family's well-maintained image started to fall apart in a matter of days. Fake togetherness, all grins, picture dumps, and matching shirt picnics. Mirrors and smoke were everywhere, but the haze was already dissipating. Personally, I didn't go back to the family events. I never apologized for not answering the branch texts that were supposed to cheer them up or the passive-aggressive invites. It was quiet when I was outside. I resumed trekking and got back in touch with old pals. Trying to balance my family responsibilities had caused me to lose contact. I even began therapy because I had the opportunity to fully examine everything I had pushed aside for decades, not because I was damaged. Something that may have previously broken me occurred a few months later. Mom had a little operation and ended up in the hospital. Jen contacted me, obviously expecting me to drop everything and come over right away, but it wasn't anything life-threatening. "Eric, you're still her son." I hesitated before responding. "No, I told those who treated me like a son that I was one. I don't know who you and your mother thought I was, but I've changed." I blocked her after that. Rachel sent me an email a week later to really apologize, not to guilt-trip me. She apologized for her complicity and stated she was unaware of how awful things had gone. Although I didn't forgive her completely, I valued her candor. I informed her. We didn't act as though nothing was wrong. I hadn't had a genuine adult talk with a family member in years until that moment. What's the best part, Ellie? As the family ghost, I was unknown to little Ellie as she grew up. In any case, I sent her a birthday present. Not because of guilt. I still felt that things should be done for the right reasons, but not for the wrong people, so I didn't buy my way in. The call eventually ended. The messages ceased. I grinned when the invite ceased. Because I wasn't an afterthought for the first time in my life, it didn't occur every time. I wasn't a +1, a wallet, a ghost, or an assistant. The person who stopped apologizing for taking up space was me, Eric. And believe me, they never forgot me again. They were unable to. Story 5. My phone rang when I was having a nice coffee break at the little cafe opposite from my office building. I nearly choked on my cappuccino as Mom's name appeared on the screen. It wasn't odd that we hadn't spoken for months. We had never been intimate. "Kelly." "Hi, sweetheart." Her tone sounded abnormally soft. I anxiously stirred my coffee and murmured, "Hello, Mom. This is not what was intended. I just wanted to see how things are going for you since the divorce. It must have been challenging." I let out a sigh as the well-known pain in my chest returned. I had just been divorced from Mark for 2 weeks after discovering him having an affair with his coworker. The recollection still hurt. Yes, I acknowledged that it has been difficult. However, I'm getting by. I got to keep the house at least. I didn't argue with Mark about it. His guilt, I believe, favored me. Before I could say anything further, Mom said, "Listen, you are sorely missed by your father and myself. This Saturday, how about we have supper together?" We haven't had a family lunch in far too long. The invitation was unexpected. I had been married to Mark for 5 years. We were invited over by my folks, perhaps twice. Conversations should always be brief and superficial. I agreed. I'm becoming overcome with curiosity. I hung up and sat there perplexed. Warm and friendly had never been my parents' style. My older sister, Lisa, had always received consecutive A's as a youngster, making her the golden child. The person who got married immediately following college. The one who produced grandkids for them. I was simply the afterthought Kelly. Saturday came around fast. I saw that my parents' little ranch-style house required new paint when I parked into their driveway. I was about to knock when Dad answered the door. He pulled me into an uncomfortable hug and shouted, "Kelly, come in," with strange eagerness. Mom came out of the kitchen using her apron to wipe her hands. "You're exactly on schedule. We're almost done with dinner." The fine china, which they always saved for Christmas and Thanksgiving, was on the table. As we ate, there was undoubtedly a problem. They asked me a ton of questions. "How is the marketing firm's job going then?" Dad inquired. All right, next month I'm hoping to get promoted. As I chopped into my chicken, I remarked. What do you currently do with your leisure time? Mom added. Do you have any new interests? I gave a shrug. Not at all. Simply concentrated on surviving each day. I suffered greatly as a result of the divorce. Mom patted my hand empathetically and murmured, Of course, dear. You're young, though. You'll recover. After exchanging looks, Dad cleared his throat. What plans do you have for the house, then? It was there. The true motive behind the invitation to supper. It's going to be my home. Flatly, I replied. Next year, I intend to refurbish. After I have some money saved up. Mom's eyes glowed. Remodeling. How appropriate. You ought to bring that up. I put my fork down. What are you saying? Dad started to lean forward. I have made the decision to fully remodel our home with your mother. The electrical wiring is no longer up to code and the plumbing has to be updated. I warily answered, That's good. You should do some work on your residence. The problem is that we need a place to stay while the renovations are being done, Mom added. Months may pass. When I recognized where this was going, my gut grew tight. Dad also mentioned that renting would be a huge waste of money because Lisa's apartment is already packed with the kids. Mom gripped my hand as she reached across the table. We hoped you would allow us to remain at your home. It's enormous, and you have plenty of room to yourself. I wanted to refuse right away. My skin crawled at the idea of my parents encroaching on my personal space. We have never had a good relationship, and I had learned to appreciate my freedom after years of feeling inferior to Lisa. But I paused when I saw their eager expressions. Perhaps this is an opportunity to finally improve your connection with them. My home was also roomy, a spacious colonial with 4 bedrooms. I answered hesitantly, I suppose that would be okay. You would have to move in when Mom gladly recommended next week. On Monday, the contractors will begin work. Dad responded, We'd be so appreciative, Kelly. It would be really beneficial to us. I nodded, against my better judgment. Okay. Until your renovations are finished, you are welcome to remain with me. I questioned whether I had misunderstood their intentions because the relief and delight on their expressions appeared sincere. Perhaps they truly wanted to get back in touch and our living situation would allow us to do so. I'm grateful, honey, Mom murmured, a little tear in her eye. For us, this is really important. My parents brought a number of luggage to my house a week later. Mom grabbed a bag full of her favorite cookware, and Dad carried a box of personal belongings. Greetings. Holding the door open, I said, I got the upstairs guest room ready for you two. Kelly, you are really nice. As she went by, Mom kissed my cheek. As I assisted them in settling in, we agreed not to cause any trouble. My instinct told me that I would regret this choice, but I forced those feelings to the back of my mind. How awful might it be? It was brief. Ultimately, living with my parents for the first several weeks went remarkably well. We only interacted on the weekends and in the evenings because I went for work every morning at 8 and didn't get back until after sex. When I went home, I was shocked to see that my mother had prepared dinner, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. How did your day at work go? As I took off my shoes and put up my coat, she would inquire. Busy, but effective. Taking a seat at the kitchen table, I would respond. Dad always waved casually as I walked by while he watched the news in the living room. They would leave early on the weekends to see how the renovations were going at their house, which allowed me to relax and keep up some semblance of my regular schedule. The bathroom has been completely gutted, according to the contractor. When they got back one Sunday night, Dad reported, water damage was discovered and has to be fixed. It seems like it will take longer than anticipated. I made a remark while attempting to hide my worry. Mom gave a nod. They always do. However, we are quite appreciative of having a more pleasant place to reside. I gave a stiff smile. I'm glad to assist. However, the harmonious cohabitation was short-lived. When I was cleaning the kitchen on a Saturday morning, I switched on some Beethoven, which was the first indication that anything was off. Mom's face was pinched when she appeared in the doorway. Would you mind declining that, Kelly? Or even better, Off. A horrible migraine is starting to strike. I reached for the speaker and responded, "Oh, sure. I simply listen to classical music as I clean. You can do anything you want when you live alone," she answered. "However, you must show consideration when you have visitors." To avoid bringing up the fact that they weren't really guests, I bit my tongue. When they requested to remain at my house, I kindly granted their request. Rather, I quietly completed the cleaning. The next problem started on a Tuesday night when my friend Jan came in with a bottle of wine and takeout. As we sat down with our dinner on the couch, I remarked, "This is so nice. I've been craving a night out with the gals." Dad cleared his throat from the doorway as we were halfway through our second glass of wine. "It is almost 9 o'clock, Kelly," pointily, he said. "Before going to bed, your mother and I are attempting to unwind." Jen lifted her eyebrows in my direction. I smiled apologetically at her. "I'm sorry, Father. We'll keep it low." Mom came up to me in the kitchen after Jen had left. "We don't mean to be tough, honey, but it's annoying to have guests after 6 o'clock. We need our quiet time because we're becoming elderly." I said, "I understand, but I didn't. I'll let my buddies know that they shouldn't visit for a time." The limitations kept piling up. The groceries I purchased caused them to grumble. Why spend money on organic? Both of them experienced back discomfort due to the firmness of their mattress, and I even had trouble loading the dishwasher. You don't arrange the plates that way. I felt increasingly alienated in my own house every day. If my residence wasn't up to their standards, I wanted to yell that they should live somewhere else. However, I said nothing. This was a short-term agreement. All I had to do was bear it a bit longer. Maya, my 7-year-old niece, yelled at me when she saw me and 2 kids were running through my living room when I got home one day. Jake, her 5-year-old brother, kept going around the coffee table in circles. I glanced around, perplexed. "Where is your mother, with Grandma in the kitchen?" Maya answered, then hurried away once again. Totally unconcerned by the mayhem coming from the other room, I discovered Lisa and my mother conversing over coffee. "Hey, sis," remarked Lisa nonchalantly. "I hope it's okay with you that we stopped by." "Obviously not. I said a falsehood. I just didn't anticipate company." Mom dismissed it with a wave of her hand. "You wouldn't mind," I assured Lisa. "There is plenty of room for the youngsters to play in your house." In contrast to their little abode, what began as a one-time visit soon turned into a regular one. My parents soon began to pick up Jake and Maya from school and bring them to my house so Lisa could pick them up after work, which was sometimes as late as 9 or 10 o'clock at night. My living room would be turned into a playground when I got home fatigued and in need of some solitude. There are toys all over the place. Both my parents' lack of attempt to regulate their grandchildren's conduct and the sticky fingerprints on my furnishings. They are simply being children. When I suggested that they may tone it down, Mom would say, "Youngsters must express themselves." Weekends became terrible. Lisa would spend whole days at my place with her husband Tom and the children. Feeling like an unwanted visitor in my own home, I would withdraw to my bedroom while the grown-ups conversed and the kids played amok. I went over to my folks in the living room one evening after Lisa had finally taken her kids home. "You like visiting the kids, I know that. I started off cautiously, but I require some relaxation after work. Perhaps they could come less frequently." Dad frowned as he looked up from his newspaper. "Kelly, they're family. Family should always be accepted." I explained that I wasn't suggesting they weren't welcome. All I'm requesting is some boundaries. Mom and Dad looked at each other. Nothing changed, but we will see what we can do. If anything, I started to dread the daily commute home as the number of visits rose. I comforted myself by thinking that things will return to normal when my parents' refurbishment was finished. The Saturday that altered everything then arrived. Mom made the announcement that she would be having a family supper at my house. We all gathered around my dining table when Lisa, Tom, and the children arrived at 5 o'clock. I observed Lisa and my parents making meaningful eye contact throughout the meal. There was a sense of tension in the air, as if everyone knew something I didn't. Dad cleared his throat as we finished dessert. "We need to talk to you more seriously, Kelly." With a knot in my gut, I put down my fork. "Lisa and her family are the focus." Mom started. "They are now having some financial issues, Their apartment's rent keeps going up. They can no longer sustain it. I fervently hoped I was mistaken, but I could see where this was going. Mom patted my hand and said, "We were thinking. Maybe, perhaps Lisa and her family might live in temporarily while they recover because you have so much room." I glanced at my sister and Dad, my jaw hanging wide. I glanced at Lisa, who was giving me what I thought was a look of helplessness and desperation. She used that identical gaze to obtain what she wanted throughout our entire upbringing. "No," I responded bluntly. "Not at all." There was silence at the table. As though my rejection had come as a complete surprise, 4 sets of eyes gazed at me in shock. It was Lisa who broke the stillness first. "No, what do you mean?" She raised her voice abruptly. "Kelly, you live here alone. For one person, this house is just too large. It's my home." My fury increasing, I answered. "Who lives there is up to me. We are family, though." Mom murmured, her shocked eyes wide. "We help one another. I have stood by you," I retorted. "For weeks, I've allowed you and your father to remain here for free. I've given permission for Maya and Jake to attend daycare at my residence. I tolerated my life being totally upended." Mom's face twisted into a look of wounded pride as her hand sprang to her chest. I never imagined my own kid would act so disrespectfully toward our living arrangement. "That's not my purpose," I spoke, attempting to maintain a steady tone. "All I'm doing is setting a limit." "Limits?" Lisa laughed. "That's just self-serving rhetoric. You live here by yourself and have all the room. We have 2 growing children and are crowded into a 2-bedroom apartment. Perhaps you need to have considered that before having children that you couldn't afford." Lisa gasped as I snapped, "You dare not! Everyone can have a large empty house and be a divorced parent without children." I clenched my teeth and muttered, "I earned this house. I put a lot of effort into my job. I made wise decisions. Above all, it belongs to me. Who lives there is up to me." "That's it then?" Dad inquired. "You refuse to assist your own sister when she is in need." Each of their faces caught my attention. The entitlement, the judgment, the disillusionment. I've been attempting to get their acceptance and be seen as valued as Lisa for years. However, I now understood that I didn't require their consent. I needed to feel at ease. That's all. I have verified that Lisa and her family will not be relocating. This is the end of the conversation. After getting up, I went to my bedroom and shut the door firmly behind me. The muted noises of their ongoing talk were audible to me, undoubtedly analyzing my brutality and selfishness. I didn't give a damn. I felt like I had defended myself for the first time in weeks. I walked to a quiet residence early the following morning. Neither of my parents recognized me when I walked to the kitchen. Mom, who had been preparing my breakfast ever since they moved in, was drinking coffee and reading a magazine with a critical eye. Dad had his crossword problem occupied. "Good morning." I tried to be quiet. All right. If they desired to behave like kids, they made that decision. After preparing my own breakfast, I left for work. When I came back that night, there was no meal, awaiting. For days, the pattern persisted. Like ghosts, my parents wandered around the house talking to each other, but never to me. The one bright spot in the whole thing was that Lisa stopped bringing the kids around. I was really beginning to appreciate the quiet after a week of this silent treatment. They had made a grave calculation error if this was their intended penalty. After Mark moved out, I lived alone for weeks and had learned to like the privacy. As usual, I departed for work on Friday morning. I arrived to the office later than expected because of a hectic day filled with back-to-back meetings. Around 7:30 p.m., I finally pulled into my driveway and was excited for a peaceful evening with a glass of wine and perhaps a movie. When I tried to turn the front door lock using my key, it refused to turn. I tried again, thinking I had misplaced my keys. Nothing. What on earth, I murmured, making a third attempt before I realized. They had replaced the locks. I loudly knocked after ringing the doorbell. A minute later, I caught a glimpse of my mother's face through the side window. The security chain pulled taut as she barely opened the door. As though I were a complete stranger, she responded, "Yes, what's happening on Mom?" "My key is broken." "Oh," she remarked nonchalantly. "Today we got our locks replaced." My mouth fell open. "Without notifying me, you changed the locks on my house." Behind her, Dad showed up. "We have been considering." "Kelly, you don't need this much room. Lisa's family is also having difficulties. Living here makes more sense for them." "Are you crazy?" I spluttered. "You cannot simply occupy my home. We will not take over." Mom was right. Simply said, we're using the area more effectively. Next month, Lisa and her family will move in. I was astounded by their boldness as I stood there. "Now let me in. This is against the law." Dad brushed it off as a family issue. "You can locate another place to live because you have a lot of money." "You honestly believe I won't make a police call?" I swore. Mom gave me a patronizing grin. "You wouldn't report your own parents to the police. They genuinely thought I would simply roll over and allow them to take my house. The property I had been making mortgage payments on for years, the house I had battled for during the divorce. I'll be staying at a hotel for the night." Even though I was furious, I spoke in an uncanny, calm tone. "When I've had time to reflect, we can talk about this tomorrow." Mom's face lit up with relief. "Kelly, you made a really mature choice. I knew you would change your mind." I heard the door of my car close as I made my way back there. They believed they had triumphed. They believed I was surrendering. They were completely mistaken. I drove to the closest hotel, checked in, and contacted my divorce attorney, James Brennan, right away. While I waited for his reply, I left an urgent message on his voicemail outlining the circumstances. I alternated between incredulity and rage as I paced the hotel room. How could I have been harmed by my own parents? Were they truly under the impression that they could get away with it? I was about to contact the cops straight when my phone rang. "It's James Kelly. I received your message. Are you all right?" "Not at all." I acknowledged that my parents had unlawfully occupied my home. "They won't allow me in after changing the locks while I was at work. That is completely against the law. No matter how long they have been living with you," James affirmed that they have no right to do that. "It's quite acceptable for you to contact the police." Feeling justified, I responded, "That's what I thought." However, I was concerned that I was exaggerating. "He told me you weren't. Depending on your state's laws, this is both criminal trespass and probably burglary. Make a police call. Make a report. I'm also available if you require legal representation later on." With a weird mixture of resolve and melancholy, I thanked him and hung up. Although I never thought I would have to call the police to mediate a conflict with my own family, they had gone too far. I saw that it was 9 p.m. when I looked at the clock. It was late enough that my parents would probably be getting comfortable for the evening and maybe even congratulating themselves on their ingenious scheme. It's the ideal time for a wake-up call. I went directly to the police station by car. When I got to the front desk, the night shift officer glanced up. "I have to report an unlawful property seizure," I said. "My house's locks have been changed and my parents won't let me in." With a nod, the officer motioned me to take a seat. "I'll require identity and evidence of ownership." I unlocked my phone to view the digital versions of my mortgage and deed paperwork and took out my driver's license. I described everything, including how I had let my parents remain while they were renovating and how they had changed the locks while I was at work and denied me access. I gave the cops my phone number so they could contact me when I gave my formal statement. "The Hampton Inn on 5th Street is where I'll be staying." I informed them that while I returned to the hotel and made an effort to unwind, I was unable to fall asleep. I was reliving the day's events. The hotel phone rang at midnight. "This is Officer Daniels from the police department, Miss Richards. I'm phoning to inquire about the state of your home." I instantly sat up. "Indeed. What took place?" "Your parents had to be detained, ma'am. When we informed them that they were occupying your property unlawfully, they fought our officers and used derogatory language. They're in the police station right now. In spite of everything, I felt sick. Are they incarcerated in holding cells?" "Indeed. When is the best time for you to visit the station?" I looked at the time. It was beyond midnight already. I can arrive first thing in the morning. My cell phone started ringing as soon as I hung up with my sister and dad making repeated calls. I just switched off my phone and didn't answer any of the calls. I wanted room to think without being influenced by others. When I put my phone back on the next morning, I was inundated with alerts, including hundreds of missed calls and texts from Lisa and my parents. I looked at some of the messages. How could you harm your own parents in this way? You were reared by us. Because of you, Mom is wailing in a jail. You're ruthless and harsh. Now retract your comment. Family supports family. You're not my sister anymore. I hung up the phone, refusing to be influenced by their guilt-tripping techniques. My parents had spent all night at the police station and were still there when I got there. They seemed awful unkempt and worn out. Mom's eyes were swollen and red from crying, and when she saw me, she began to cry again. For a minute, Dad just had a disappointed and angry expression. I felt pity threatening to overwhelm me. After all, these were my parents. Then I recalled how blatantly they had intended to rob my home. Hell is entitled. Just because they desired it, they didn't steal what was rightfully mine. I repressed my sympathy and remained steadfast. I am prepared to take back my statement, but only with one restriction. I looked straight at my parents when I informed the policeman. They must leave my residence right away after gathering their belongings. Today. Yeah, all right, Dad responded hastily, his fury giving way to desperation. Kelly, you can do whatever you want. Mom frantically nodded while crying. We're going now. Please, just remove the charges. They were freed after the police fined them for defying and disrespecting authorities. They gladly complied with my instruction that they vacate right away at the parking lot of the station. When Lisa saw her parents come out, she was waiting and pacing nervously next to her car. She hurried over to assist them. With a look of utter malice in her eyes, she placed them in her car and glared at me. They then took off in the direction of my residence. To make sure they went there, I drove after them. My folks started packing as soon as they got to my place. In the garage, they worked swiftly and quietly as they loaded everything into their car. They were prepared to go within an hour. They didn't say goodbye to me before they drove off. When they pulled out of the driveway, they didn't even look at me. I got all the locks replaced as soon as they left by calling a locksmith. I made the clear decision that I would never again allow anyone other than my family to enter my house. My mother sent me a text message a few days later. You are no longer a part of this family in my eyes. We no longer wish to contact with you. I exhaled a sigh of relief as I gazed at the message. It was not a sense of regret or grief, it was liberty. I also did not want to speak to them. Their incessant insistence, their partiality for Lisa, and their feeling of right to my house and my life. At last, I was free of everything. I now live alone and peacefully at my home. My life is my own, free from their demands and criticism. I don't talk to my sister or my parents, and to be honest, it has made my life so much more tranquil. I occasionally question whether I should feel bad about how things turned out, but then I remind myself that I didn't cause this circumstance. I just refused to allow myself to be exploited and controlled. I feel totally at peace for the first time in years, and my house is